Hey Clancy, welcome. It's my grandma. Wanted to share it with you guys. Then I'm going to go to bed. I think the cephalexin's making me tired. Oh, hi, you guys. Hi. Thanks, everyone. Thank you for y'all being here. Clancy, Freeside, Pink Peony. Yeah, so my live earlier was like 40 minutes long, and I went down to the thing with my daughter, and we had our cheeseburger, and it was big. I mean, they must have started out like this because they were still pretty big. Had all the fixins with chips and this yummy Kool-Aid with like 7 Up or something in it. And they let me bring one up to my son. He didn't want to go down. I nearly begged him. I was like, come on, the weather's nice, nice sunshine. He didn't want to be around people. But this place is for low income housing, but it's a fanciful, do I dare say, apartment complex. I mean, it's got a pool and a little movie theater, you guys. It does, has a movie theater. And when the kids were younger, they would have movies in there. I don't even know how it works anymore. They used to have videos in a little cabinet. You'd rent one out, for free. But everyone's sort of on their devices these days, even compared to 20 years ago. But anyways, we had that, and I brought up my son his hot dog, and I caught up on some of other people's streams and things, and okay, I didn't know it was happening. And I actually went over to Morbid X, and said hi. Went up on his panel. My audio worked for a little bit, and that was nice because it's been over a month, and he's been good to me. He's always good to me, and I think he's a nice person. Anyway, yeah. And as far as my sister goes, she had third chemo treatment on the, I think it was on the 3rd. So, I mean, I've gotten a little text from her, and I guess she's doing okay, but it's real strong chemo, so she doesn't have to have it like every day or something. It's once every 3 weeks. But anyway, so I was looking at my books, going through all my books my mother's ever sent me and all the letters she's ever sent me. And I actually cleaned out or organized and cleaned out some of the storage out on the deck the day after my finger was broke, but it was so numb, with all the Novocaine and everything. And I'm right-handed, so I use this hand. And I came across my children's artwork and their IEP letters and bulletins and brochures and all this stuff. I saved everything, big bags. So I went through 6 to 8 bags of stuff, and there were some letters in there, some letters from my daughter's father to her, which she didn't really want to see, but I saved them. I saved things like that. But we're talking um, this many letters from my grandparents and my mom, not counting an entire purse full of letters I have just from my mom in the past, and cards, right? I don't know. Like, I save every birthday card, every Christmas, every letter. And I know it's because we don't live close to each other and never have. I mean, ever. When I moved out when I was 21, I mean, what is that? 40 some years ago, I haven't lived close to my mom. But just a second here. What are you doing over there? Oh, lovely. Okay, that's just great. All right. Okay. I need to get that. That's just lovely. Mama Kitty, do female cats spray or did she piss right on my bed? So now I've got to fix all that. She's majorly in heat. I need to get her fixed. I've never seen her do that. She was scratching on my bed, and I was like, what? Good grief. But I'm not going to do a panel or anything again. And according to Leanie, is going to start her live in half an hour or something. So I just wanted to read part of this book that came out. So this is from my mom too, another book. Christmas 2018. Dear Megan, this is your grandma Helen's own story. Love from Mom. And it's pretty special. All the pictures are in black and white. You're drawing a rainbow, says Freeside. So, for anybody that is interested in, heritage and older pictures and what life was back a good 100 years ago, my grandma, Helen, this is my mother's mother, passed away. When was it? Early 2000s, maybe. She was 90 something. But this is her mom and dad. So that would be, of course, my great grandma and grandpa. They say when you start reminiscing, so it says Bennett and Benna BERSIE, 1942, that picture was taken. They say when you start reminiscing about the olden days, it is a sign of getting old. Yes, I am getting old. So apparently my grandma wrote this. I didn't even know about this book, that it was in the making or anything. And I believe it. I have to wash my hands so much, they're just dry as anything. Look how dry that is, and it's itching. I had to get I have some pink sugar over there, Dolly Vision lotion. I've got a little bit left. I'm going to grab some in a minute. But they helped get this book together for her. I believe, I don't know if it was right before she passed or shortly after. Yes, I am getting old, but writing about my wonderful childhood has been something I have been planning for a long time, if for only my children and grandchildren. Hey, I gotta get some lotion. It's absolutely Dolly's luxurious body lotion, pink sugar. See, I use it. I saved it for the longest time because I just wanted it around. And then I started using it. Oh my gosh, it feels so good. It really is good stuff, you guys. It's got a lot of different oils in it. So anyway, oh, that feels so much better. And it smells really, really good, literally like pink sugar. I have a turtle haze. I think that's what it's called, that I haven't even opened yet, that I've had for like a year. When this is gone, I'll open it. Okay, so okay. I'm going to put it on big screen, you guys, and not read comments for a little bit. I'll show it again. This is her when she was a little girl. Helen, Lucille, Bersie, my little autobiography. Okay, so then the next page is this one, which looks like her mother, her sister or brother, I'm not sure. Levon and Helen with their mother, Bina. There's Grandma Strand, well, Helen. It's really kind of sad, but she lived a pretty long life. The first day of my life that I can remember, I toddled across the kitchen floor and looked out of the window and saw my first snow on the ground. I jumped up and down and clapped my hands and said, "Mama, look at all the sugar on the ground." I must have been about 2 years old at the time. I lived on a farm located in the rolling hills of northeastern Iowa, about 10 miles from the Minnesota border. I lived with my mother, father, and 4 sisters, Bernice, Hattie, Marcella, and Gertrude, and 1 brother, Harlan. They were all older than I. I had a sister, Levon, later, 5 years younger than I was. So this is Helen with her sisters, Gertrude, Bernice, and Marcella. Wow. I have essential tremors, and some days they're worse than others. And with this injury and gosh darn laceration and fracture thing I have, they've been a little worse. Okay, so the Selness Farm is the next chapter. My mother and father, Bina and Bennett Bersie, lived on the farm that belonged to my mother's parents, grandfather and grandmother Selness. Grandfather Selness had passed away, and my mother took care of her invalid mother, who had been bedridden for 10 or more years with rheumatism. I remember the day I went into grandmother's bedroom that was next to the kitchen, and I heard grandmother making a gurgling sound, and went to mother and told her, "Grandma is making a funny sound." And next mother was calling for the doctor on the phone. Grandma died. Her coffin was put in the bay window of our living room. It was a sad day, even for a 2-year-old. Everyone was crying, so I had to cry too. Being the youngest in the family, I got to sleep with my mother and my father. I remember many a morning my father would wrap me in a quilt and set me on top of the warming oven on the kitchen range while he started the kitchen fire. First, he put the coffee cooking, and then he would make the fire in the potbelly stove in the living room. Then, when the coffee was done and my feet were getting nice and warm, he would make me a short cup of weak coffee, too. Never realizing that as I grew older, I would constantly read in our classroom books that coffee was bad for children, and every time I did drink coffee, I worried that I perhaps would die from too much coffee. My father was a hard worker. I never ever heard of him getting up later than 4 or 5 in the morning. Besides farming the land and milking the cows, he had a job being a road boss for the Winnesheet County roads, and he also fixed the bridges. So when he was gone, my older sisters had to keep up with the chores and farm work. Many a summer day they worked until dark. We always had a hired man to help, usually a young boy in the neighborhood. Everything was done with horses. We didn't have cars yet, but I do remember our hired man had a Model T Ford even before my father had one. We had many relatives on both sides of the family who lived all around us, within 15 or 20 miles from Mabel and Spring Grove in Minnesota. Many times, Pa would hitch up the sleigh, fill it up with hay, tuck all of us in with blankets and fur robes, and we would go to town to buy groceries or visit relatives. Ma would heat our irons on the stove, the ones we did our ironing with, and wrap them with newspapers and put them down by our feet to keep warm along the way. We went to house parties once in a while, and we children would watch the people roll up the rugs and have dancing. I had uncles and cousins who played violins and the piano. They were the band. When we got tired, we would be put to bed amongst the coats on the beds. I don't remember too much that went on with my older sisters and my brother at that time, especially at the age of 5, because I was too busy exploring the wonderful world I was brought into. Some of the outstanding things I do remember were quite dramatic to me. One day, my aunt, my father's sister, came and brought along her 2 sons, about the same age as my brother Harlan. He was 5 years older than I, so when it came time to get the cows to milk, I wanted to tag along. We had to go way down the hills to the valley or bottoms to get them. One of the bulls across the fence would keep us on the alert all the way. Of course, the boys did lots of things to scare me. They took me on top of a high cliff and talked me into lying on my stomach to look over the edge. It really scared me and made me cry. I had nightmares for a long time after that. Boys will be boys. And there's little Helen in the middle, Gertrude, her older sister, and Harlan, her brother. One day I got to visit the country school with Harlan and one of my sisters. We could walk around the road, which was 2 or 3 miles, or cut across the bottoms, which made it closer to the school. We always dreaded crawling through fences and walking the cow paths because we were afraid of some new bull in a pasture, especially if we had red on. Because whether it was an old folks' tale or not, we were told bulls hated red. Well, we got to school, but it was a mild spring day and all the ice in the creek had thawed, and the creek was full of huge chunks of ice and was really flooding. Instead of going back around, we decided to go home the shortcut way. When we got to the creek, we had to follow each other in single file along the fence and cow path near the edge of the swollen creek. My older sister Gertrude went first. I was second. My brother was last. Right when we were walking along the narrowest path between the creek and the fence, I heard a big splash. I started to cry and called Harlan fell in. I didn't dare look back, but when we got to a little wider path, I was able to look back and my brother was there and he was okay. He had thrown a big rock in the water to scare us. I was almost hysterical by that time. I was never so glad to see anyone in my life. And that night I prayed to God and thanked him that my brother was alive. Gee, she got teased a lot, huh? Wow. All right. I'm just going to put that up in case anybody would like to or donate, is that the word, to the channel. Okay, another thing that happened was on a day I was sitting on our porch during the summertime. We spent a lot of time out on the porches cleaning vegetables to can or cook. Mother was with us. I had a balloon which was broken. I had just learned to make a little balloon by sucking it into my mouth and to make noise with it on my teeth. A piece of it broke off and lodged in my throat. I choked. My mother turned me upside down and she pounded on my back. I guess I was blue in my face before she got it out. It was a close call that I will always remember. Another time my brother took the powder out of a bullet and pounded on the powder with a hammer. It exploded and he came running. His face was all black, his eye was brown, and some hair was burned off. It was not as serious as it could have been, but we were certainly scared. Every summer, about the 1st of May, we would move out to the summer kitchen. We had a large kitchen table to seat our family, 6 children at the present time, mother, father, and a hired man. We had a kitchen range out there. There were large open windows with screens. It was cooler in the summer to do all our canning. In those days, they would butcher a cow and a hog and can the meat. So Ma spent most of her summer days canning and getting food ready for winter. When it rained or a storm came up, we closed the big doors on hinges so we could shut out the rain. The wood floors and wood chairs were scrubbed often on hands and knees with a scrubbing brush. It was always so cozy, and the happiest times were when we would walk into our summer house and smell the cakes, bread, and good cooking. Then there was always threshing time, when all the neighbors would get together to help us thresh the grain. Every mother would try to outdo each other with the cooking for the threshers, and my mother was a pretty good cook. We also would clean, paint, and paper all the rooms in our house during the summer. We spent most of our time in the summer kitchen, so our big house was always nice and clean when friends and relatives would come to visit. It was always cool in there because we didn't have to make a fire in the stove. We slept upstairs. In the winter time, it would get very cold up in our bedrooms. We had only one register in the floor where the heat came up from the stove downstairs, but we always kept warm. I always had to take turns sleeping between my sisters. 2 sisters each had a bedroom to share, Bernice and Hattie and Marcella and Gertrude. Harlan had a bedroom of his own. It was exciting to me because my sisters would take turns telling me stories, and I enjoyed listening to their plans and experiences. So there's one of her sisters, Hattie. Oops. And here's her sister, Bernice, and there's little Helen. When my youngest sister was soon to be born, Ma and I went to Spring Grove to stay with her sister. It was a few days before she expected. They had a hospital there. I had 8 cousins, so it was always so much fun to visit them. One cousin especially because her name was Helen, too, and she was my age. She had older sisters and younger brothers. They were a musical family and the best storytellers in the world, I thought. We spent many nights listening to stories and singing songs and playing the guitar out on the porch. There was never a dull moment. In town, everything was so exciting. We could go uptown and watch the roller skaters in a large outdoor tent in the park. Maybe once or twice we would get to skate if we could afford it. Ma and I had been there for 2 days, and in the morning I woke up and my mother wasn't there. My aunt told me that Mama was in the hospital and that if I would be a good girl, we would go up to see her. She said my mother had a big, beautiful doll waiting for me. I was so happy. I skipped all the way uptown anticipating my new doll, not knowing that the doll I was to get was my baby sister. I remember how disappointed I was. I really didn't know my mother was going to have a baby. Things like that weren't mentioned in those days. And this is little Helen on the Selness farm. She looks so happy there. All smiling. The excitement of a new baby in our home soon wore off and life went on. I remember more things that I managed to get involved in with my brother. One day, Harlan built a sleigh out of a big wooden box. He put runners on it, hitched up his horse to it, and we got permission to ride it to the neighbor near our schoolhouse. I was only 5 and Harlan was 10. He put me in the box and covered me with a horse blanket, and we took off. He stood on the runners behind. When we were almost to our destination, the horse got spooked and started to run away. My brother grabbed me out of the box, and the horse and the box went down in the creek under the bridge. We picked up the horse blanket and headed to the neighbor's house. In the meantime, the horse ran home, much to the worry of our parents. Of course, we called home to let them know where we were and that we were all right. As we walked down the hill to our home, we sang, "I'm looking over a 4-leaf clover." We thought we would get a scolding, but they laughed when they heard us singing. I guess they were glad to see us. So this is Harlan, her little brother on his horse. Harlan Bersie and his pony. His pony, not his horse. Highlandville. We moved to Highlandville for 2 years. Why? I do not know. My father must have had a good reason. Probably he had an important road job near there. Highlandville was only 3 miles from our farm. There were 2 grocery stores, a bank, a telephone exchange in the town. I gotta remember to keep this above my heart. I know my little sister, who we named Lavon and later called Oni, was at crawling age. I know we lived in the house built onto one end of the grocery store. The family who owned the telephone exchange also owned the grocery store, and I remember I was chased out of the store every once in a while, perhaps when I made a nuisance of myself. On my first day of school to primary grade, I was given a handful of corn and the teacher wrote my name on the desk. I was supposed to outline my name with corn. While watching the goings on and feeling like crying because I missed my mother, I stuck a piece of corn up my nose. I spent the rest of the day trying to get it out. I didn't have the nerve to tell the teacher what I had done. I managed to get the kernel out without any help. That was my first day of school, and I certainly did not want to go back. I remember when my baby sister was just about to crawl. My mother was cleaning the potbelly stove. On the back of the stove, she kept a soup can with kerosene in it. While she cleaned the stove, she set the can on the floor. When she left the room for a minute, baby sister crawled over to the can and drank the kerosene? Wow. I read this, but I read it I kind of skimmed it and looked at the pictures years ago. Forgot this part. When my mother discovered what had happened, she became hysterical and called the doctor, who was 20 miles away. My sister got real sick, but she made it. Another thing for which I was thankful. One day when my brother and my 2 cousins were together upstairs, I must have made a pest of myself because I wanted to get involved. My father had made some homebrew beer. Of course, it was always hidden in the storeroom that we were not supposed to know about. I went upstairs to see what the boys were doing. They gave me 2 glasses of beer. I started to get sick and I passed out, rolled all the way down the stairs. Ma picked me up and put me to bed. She was about to call the doctor when I threw up all the beer. She found out what had happened. My brother never did get paddled much, being the only boy, but I wouldn't be surprised if he got it that time. During the summer months, my mother was very busy, so it probably helped her to let me go and stay with different relatives. One summer, I went to stay with my uncle Effrey, my father's brother, and his wife Lava. They had a daughter, Marlis. She had graduated from high school and was a new teacher in the local country school. For about 2 weeks in the summer, everything was fine during the day, but when dusk came, I always got homesick. I would walk outside to the outhouse and cry and cry. I didn't want my relatives to know I cried. Then supper was ready. I couldn't eat much. Then they started talking about what we were going to do the next day, and I would begin to feel a lot better and fall asleep. In the morning, I was always glad I was still there, and every night at dusk, I would get homesick again. Aw. Then a decision was made that I would go to school there. Of course, I wasn't so crazy about that idea, but I didn't dare say no. I guess because Ma had a small baby and Pa was gone on the road a lot, she thought it would help her for a while with one less kid around. Well, about the second day in school, I had a seat near the furnace register. I accidentally dropped a whole box of crayons in the holes of the furnace register. Marla scolded me. That was my last day there. I must have cried for Mother a lot because I got to go home. I was never so glad. Another episode in my life was when my two cousins, Grant and Leland, were staying at our house. My brother was their age. They took an old buggy and cut the top off. I still don't know why they let me go along, but I think it was so I could help them push the buggy back up the hills. When we got to the big long hill going down to Highlandville, we all climbed on and someone steered the front wheels with his feet, and we rode that buggy all the way down to Highlandville. How we ever got the thing back home, I can't remember, but I suppose Pa came after it. Harlan was pretty special to him, the only son with 6 girls in the family. This entire family is Norwegian, so the names kind of sound like it too. So life on Oak Street, Decorah. The BERSIE house on Oak Street. And I won't say where my mother is, but she's today fairly close to Decorah, Iowa. Now, another big change came into my life. My father sold his farm in Highland Township and we moved to Decorah. He got a dray line business and 2 houses on Washington Street for his farm. He kept his horses because he had a big barn for all the dray line horses down on the flat. My father hauled all the freight from the railroad depot to the stores. In those days, they didn't have trucks to bring in foodstuffs. Pa hauled butter and cream from the creamery to the grocery stores. He sawed wood and plowed gardens. With his wagons and teams, he hauled coal to people's basements and shoveled it in. My father made the first rubber-tired wagon in Decorah. Using the tires from old cars, he had the first garbage route in town and got 15 cents for each sack of garbage. I had to help him collect his bills, and I worried that I couldn't make the right change. I was shy and afraid of people, especially if they teased me. To me, moving to Decorah was like moving to New York City. My older sisters, Bernice, Hattie, Marcella, got jobs at the clothing stores. Harlan and I went to school. I lived only 2 blocks from school on Washington Street. I cried pretty near every day when I first went to school. I didn't have any friends yet, so I would come home from school for dinner and pretend that I was sick. One day I did that and Ma said I had to go back to school. I ran and hid under the bed. She took the hairbrush off the dresser and threw it at me and hit me in the eye. She didn't think that she had hit me that hard and she made me go to school. I cried all the way. Wow. My teacher wanted to know what happened. I told her that I fell down and hurt my eye. She let me go home. When I got home, Ma noticed my eye was getting black. Then she hugged me and said she didn't know she had hit me. She only wanted to chase me out from under the bed. Well, sooner or later, everything got better. I found a friend and survived. Then Pa sold our 2 houses on Washington Street for a big house on Oak Street where we had quite a few acres, a barn, a large apple orchard, and a plum orchard. It was on a street where there were lots of kids. The town called it Incubator Avenue. Pa put up a swing and drove all the way into the country for sand, which was like brown sugar, and he made a sandbox. I believe I got acquainted with my friend Effie Nelson that first day, and we swung in the swing. From then on, lots of kids became friends, and to this day I think of the Oak Street kids. All summer long, we played games outside until 10 or 11 o'clock at night. Our parents had a hard time getting us in to go to bed. I just loved Oak Street. During the summer and sometimes even on weekends during school, we would go to one of the many parks in Decorah. We used to walk up to Phelps Park and swim in the lily pond amongst the pollywogs. On the long walk from Oak Street, we would get so hot walking that distance that the lily pond was a cool treat. We'd wear our cotton dresses right into the pond, and they dried out before we got back home. Some days we'd go to Dunning Springs because we loved to walk on the swinging bridge, a footbridge from the flat over the upper Iowa River. That's really cool. When I took a train there in 2011 with my daughter, the last time, I've physically seen my mom, she took us to Dunning Springs. Yeah, there was kind of a waterfall thing there and a cool bridge. And we actually she had got sandwiches from Subway in town, in Decorah. So it was pretty amazing to sit here and read this to you guys and reflect on that day. We walked to Sewer Springs many times carrying our frying pans and potatoes so we could fry our dinner. We cut across 3 separate pastures and woods. We usually stayed all day and walked home and made it just before dark. Our parents were glad to see us safe and sound. We would eat a good supper and sleep like a log, ready to start out on a new adventure the next day. One day after school, a new friend coaxed me into going to the Oneota Creek under the West Side Bridge. We found clams. We broke them open. It was a hard job, and we found little pink pearls inside. We each had a pocket full of pearls. We talked about getting rich, and that night we got home quite late. It was getting dark, and my parents were really worried. I got heck. This was supposed to be our secret, and we didn't tell anyone. We had plans to go back, but then somebody told us the pearls weren't real. We had spent a lot of time and hard work to open up the clams, and we never went back again. We lived close to the fairgrounds, and so during fair week, I'd weed the whole garden to make 50 cents for the fair. Lots of company came, relatives from Mabel and Spring Grove. Ma was busy canning and fixing good meals for everyone. Our family spent only about 1 day and 1 evening at the fair, but we would go to the Lutheran cemetery on the hill near our home, and we would sit and look down on the lights of the fair and listen to the music. Wow. My mom brought me to that Lutheran cemetery church too. And now I'm recalling she even pointed out the house, where her mom lived. Wow. My friends and I spent much time in that cemetery. We learned to walk on the pole fence where the horse teams were tied before there were automobiles. We got pretty good at it, but when we fell, it wasn't very pleasant. We would walk all around the cemetery looking at the graves, but being careful not to step on them. I think we knew where everyone's grave in town was. Gee. All right, so apparently this is a family gathering, which is pretty big. Family gathering on Oak Street. Hi, Teresa Mills. Well, also though, Barbara, I hold it up because when I go like this, it pounds more and it stings more. I mean, you're probably right, but I've noticed if I just wing it around and put it down like this, the blood rushes to the tip of it and it stings more. The last since I left Bader's, he said I should take or could take, or the ER even, well, both of them, 3 Motrin every 6 hours for 1 week. That's what Bader said. But ever since I've taken 3, it lasts, honestly, not even 9, like 12 hours. So that's good. So I haven't taken like 3 or something and taken more in 6 hours because that's kind of a lot, not even 9. And today, for the first time, I took 2 instead of 3 in the last few days. So yeah. But I probably don't have to hold it up here, do I? But I do feel I need to keep it upright. It makes a difference. Because remember, it's cut to the bone. It's deep. And then I've got the fracture. Then there was a time when we did shows in our barn on Oak Street. We made a curtain to draw across the front of the stage. We wrote the plays and then walked up and down the street to advertise the show. Once when my little sister Oni was about 3 years old, so I would have been about 8, I made a dress for Oni out of an old flag my father had found. I didn't know that it was against the law to cut up a flag. When we advertised our show, Oni walked with us with her little flag dress on. She wet her pants. You should have seen the red and blue run down her legs. That was a disaster. Wow. We put on one show where my friend Gail Wepler played a criminal. She was a really good acrobat. She got shot in the play and she flipped over backwards out of the upstairs hayloft and landed on a blanket we had spread over the manure pile below. In another show, we were going to execute the criminal. We finally coaxed Lester to be the criminal. We took a big metal gasoline barrel, tied the electric chair to it, pounded on the barrel for every shot of electricity. He did such a good job portraying his execution. Wow. He bounced the chair every time we gave him the jar, and at the end he tipped over in his chair. He was the one who got the most applause that day. So this picture is the BERSIE family on Oak Street on Helen's confirmation day. So little Helen has her little dress with her bow on in the middle of her dad, her mom, her 1, 2, 3 sisters. It looks like Harlan. He was blonde when he was younger. He came brown hair later on, and the other sisters. Confirmation day. I don't even know really what that is, you guys. Does that mean like when you're baptized? I don't know. We had to walk about a mile to school every day. Most of the time we cut across over Pleasant Hill. There were no houses up there then. It was very cold up there on that hill sometimes. I remember hearing the school bell ring when I was still on the hill on my way to school, so I really had to run fast down the path, especially when there were deep snowdrifts. I believe I made it on time only in the spring. Going back home from school over the hill when it became spring and warm, we girls rolled down our stockings. Sometimes my mother scolded me because she said I might get pneumonia. We believed everything our parents told us in those days. After school, I had my jobs to do. I would wash the porch and the sidewalks with my mother's tub water that she washed the clothes in. Then she didn't have to empty the tub. I'd wash the steps way up to the outdoor pump. In the spring, I weeded the garden and I cleaned the chicken house all by myself. During the winter, we had good hills to slide on. We would start way up at the Lutheran Cemetery and fly down across Broadway, then on down across Main Street. There weren't so many cars in those days, but we usually crossed our fingers, hoping no cars would come when we crossed Main Street. We built snow forts in the wintertime. We would make a bunch of hard snowballs and then have a real fight. One night, Ma called me many times to come in. We were building forts in the dark. It must have been 10 o'clock at least, in school the next day. My mother dressed up my sister Hattie in a long dark coat and had her come down the road towards us. There was a woman we used to call Crazy, who we often saw come out of her house and look up and down the road when we were going to school. So when Hattie came slowly walking down the hill towards us, I really thought she was the crazy lady. I never ran into the house so fast in my life. That was one time I really got scared. Ma really laughed. She could really pull a fast one. Oh, okay, so this is my grandma. What, in her 20s or something? That's her, my mom's mom. And apparently, Helen Lucille Bersie, she passed away in 2012. So, 12 years ago, you guys. I had forgotten what year. Wow. Oh, that's it? Wow, you guys, that's completely it. It just ended like that. It just ended just like that. Okay, and that picture was taken in 1937, so if she's born in 19, so 29, 39 would be 20. She was 18 there. That must be her high school graduation picture thing. And what's pretty amazing is how much she looks like my mother's age 18 picture that I've already shown in past videos. Well, you guys, thank you. It's an actual book out there. Well, no, I don't know if you can get it because it doesn't say. Well, I mean, I don't know. I mean, this is on the back. I don't know, but it doesn't say like the publishers. There's no nothing. It just starts, you guys, and just ends. So why would it have this on the back? I don't know. But anyway, you guys, that's about an hour long. And I've got to take my meds. I do that every evening. I haven't done that yet. And hi, Artsy. Hi, The Shit Show. Hi, you guys. I just read a little book about my grandma, an autobiography that she wrote and her kids put together for her. Helen Lucille Bersie. In Iowa, on the farm, different chores, going to school, different little mishaps and adventures that she had. I'm thinking she never saw that book. I mean, she wrote the writings, but she didn't see the finished thing. And she passed from cancer. Yeah. And I've read it before, but I more like skimmed it and looked at the pictures years ago. So that was actually fun for me to sit here and share it with you guys and read it and reflect, Yeah, my grandparents are passed away too on my dad's side. It's sad. I wish I had talked to them more, been able to see them more. I mean, I remember really nice trips to Kimball, South Dakota. And she lived in a huge white house. That was the first time I had ever seen a hammock, much less been in one. And she's the one that turned me on to sliced cucumbers in vinegar and apple cider vinegar. You soak them in there with salt and pepper. So good. I always really liked those. And we would shuck corn and stuff like that. And she had a big family too. She ended up having 7 kids. Adrian, No, Anthony was first born, but he got hit by a drunk driver in the 80s when he was on his bicycle riding home from the hospital, hit by a drunk driver and killed, dragged and killed. It was awful. It was the first time I heard my mother scream on the phone, or scream, period. And he was like 40 or something like that. So he passed away. And then, no, my mom was the oldest. My mom was the oldest. Then it was Anthony. Then it was Uncle Adrian, who's still alive and in Iowa, in the same town my mom's in. And then Uncle Johnny. Johnny's there too. And then Ilona and Heloise. Ilona passed away from cancer 5-6 years ago. She had breast cancer, but she was in remission for many, many years, and had different surgeries done and stuff. And Heloise, she's still alive and kicking in nearby town of my mom. And then there's Wyatt, and Wyatt is in South Dakota somewhere. I think Mitchell, South Dakota. And I think the last time I don't think I saw Wyatt, or did I, in 2011? Maybe I did, but I'm thinking it was when my son was like 6 years old and we drove there, my ex and I. But yeah, so, and then I have lots of cousins that I just never ever see. I've got the boys in Iowa, Blaine, Blair, Brock, and Briggs. Isn't that bizarre? Blaine, Blair, Brock, and Briggs, my cousins. They're all older. They're probably in their 40s and 50s now. I haven't seen them since I was like a teen. So yeah. And I was born in Vermillion, South Dakota. That's where I was born and raised. But my grandparents were 20 minutes away in Iowa, because Vermillion is right near the border of like Akron, Iowa, and that's a real small town in Westfield. And then those towns are 20 minutes from Sioux City, Iowa. And I lived on a farm there for a while and stuff with them. And then with my dad for a while, when my mom, I guess, I don't know where she was. I don't know if she was in Vermont or for a little bit or what. I just can't remember. And then I ended up being back in South Dakota, and then my elementary years, I moved to Vermont, you guys. I went to elementary school after my kindergarten in Vermillion. I was in Lyndonville, Vermont for first, second, third, and fourth grade. And then I moved to Burlington, Vermont, was living with my mom, and I was there for 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th grade. So this South Dakota, Iowa, all the way, to Vermont, you know what I mean? And then visiting when we could, flying or traveling to Iowa. There's always been a lot of traveling. And then in between all this time, my mom's lived in New York City with her new husband back in the 80s, because my parents got divorced, on a houseboat on the Hudson River. I visited her there for 2 weeks. That was incredible. I'd never been to New York. Took a train there by myself. I've done a lot of traveling by myself. I took the Greyhound twice, clear from Seattle to Florida in my 20s, by myself once. And then from Florida I mean, and then from Seattle to Rhode Island once by myself, not counting taking it from Florida to Washington later on. Just always uprooting and leaving and trying to run from my problems, kind of, you know what I mean? A bad relationship, or just couldn't find my niche in life or anything. And then, so when I had my son, that's why I really felt like I found my purpose in life, becoming a mother at 33, you know, not 20 or 21. So honestly, you guys, I think that's why, like, one reason I'm just here, just been here since 2001, and I was like 38 or something then. I mean, that's pretty darn young. And yeah, hi, Tattooed Rebel. Hi. So, you know, just all this flying and busing and moving and, you know, making new friends and then moving and this and that. And now I've been here in Washington State since 1991. I mean, I'm a full-fledged Washingtonian, I guess. But my heart is in the Midwest, and I consider myself a Midwestern girl. I just do. But enough of that. And it's been an hour and 3 minutes, and I've got a little bit of a headache. I need to drink some water, is what I need to do. But I should see you guys tomorrow. You guys have a good night. Thank you for coming in and coming to PCT is Extreme. If you want to help me with, you know, my kittens and things like that, getting them fixed even, or at least the mama, my PayPal and Cash App is up there. And yeah, we'll see you next time. Thank you. Bye, you guys. I love you guys. Thanks for listening to my grandma's stories.